What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're gonna break down Valorant patch 4.04, and this patch is freaking crazy. We have rework and changes to a whole bunch of characters, huge nerfs to Viper and Astra, huge buffs to Brimstone and Omen, and a brand new rush meta potentially, icebox changes, and Yoru is being added into the patch. So there's a lot we gotta talk about, there's a lot we gotta go over, and I am freaking hyped. But first, let me tell you about this insane tool, the Overwolf Valorant Tracker. This is an in-game Valorant tracker that is gonna give you live performance updates while you're playing. You're gonna be able to look at your player profile, find your best and worst maps so that you know exactly what you need to focus on, your own personal stats, your most played agent, that you can use to gather important information about what you need to do and how you can improve from here. This is our most exciting sponsor yet because it goes hand in hand with our mission to help you improve, and this is perfect for those of you who want to climb. So go check it out right now in the download links below. Now specifically, this patch is going to target every single controller in the game, finally add in the long-awaited Yoru rework, and it's going to introduce these really cool updates to Icebox. Now, before we get into specifics, let's talk about a general improvement that was added. Now, they improved the system to place abilities at targeted ground locations. This update should make it easier to find valid placement locations in tight spaces. These are the abilities affected: Omen Shuttered Step, Viper's Pit, Chamber's Trademark, and Rendezvous, every Killjoy ability, Yoru's Gate Crash, and Sage's Barrier Orb. Now, let's actually jump into the craziness that is this patch with the controller changes, with first off, the two buffs, Omen and Brimstone. So let's talk about Omen. Omen's dark cover cooldown got decreased from 40 seconds to 30 seconds. That's a really, really big change. The cost did get increased though, from 100 to 150, but the projectile speed got increased from 2800 to 6400, which all you need to know about that is it's more than double as fast. So that dark cover is gonna yeet across the map incredibly quickly. And the fact that the cooldown decreases means that you have many more opportunities to use dark cover early, potentially rotate, potentially execute later, and the timing for all your engagements are a lot better. And I really do think that this is a very good change for dark cover overall, even if it's slightly more expensive. Next up is Shrouded Step. The cost got decreased from 150 to 100, and the pre-teleport delay got decreased from 1 second to 0.7 seconds. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but making Shrouded Step easier to buy, cheaper, and allowing it to be more instantaneous, less of a delay, means that it's gonna be more possible to get out of specific situations, tuck in a cubby, quickly yeet around the corner, or even be a little bit aggressive with this ability, which is interesting to say the least. Now, the last change is the change that I really like. It's Paranoia, added forward spawn offset, so players adjacent to Omen are not hit. This is just a really great change to Paranoia. I think that was one of the worst aspects of it, using it aggressively to push it with the team. You would often blind your teammates, or you would often get blinded by your Omen teammates. And I think that that is no longer the case here. So I think this all combined makes Omen really, really good. And I really like these changes. Now, these changes alone wouldn't be enough to make Omen see substantial play, but when we combine them with the nerfs that we're gonna talk about in a little while, you will be seeing Omen in the foreseeable future for ranked and pro play alike. Now, next up, we gotta talk about Brimstone, and he's probably the most exciting change in this entire thing. So first off, let's talk about the boring stuff, the Sky Smoke. Deploy time decreased from 2 seconds to 1 second. Deploy radius increased from 5,000 to 5,500, and smoke height increased to match other controllers. So all of that is fine. Not too big of a deal, not too big of a change. But the really interesting thing is with the stim beacon. So everyone talked about how the stim beacon is, you know, kind of unnecessary, kind of not very great, and it was hard to use effectively. And many people wanted to rework it, myself included, but instead, they now added a 15% speed boost in addition to rapid fire. You heard me right, a 15% speed boost. And the thing that you could compare this to is like Spike Rush, the speed boost ground circle that you could grab and then fly around. And, you know, if you really start to think about what this could enable, you could have potentially faster rotates with the team because everyone could run through this and rotate fast. You can use this to rush motherfuckers down because you throw the stim beacon and you're faster. And I don't even want to know what BS you could get into combining this with Neon flying in there. I mean, you could have a freaking Brimstone rush comp, and I don't know how good it would actually be, but it definitely seems like a whole lot of fun and incredibly scary to get rushed down by 5 speedy boys. So yeah, I really love these changes, and I'm very interested to see how they play out in game. Now we got to move on to probably one of the biggest impactful changes in the entire freaking patch notes, and it's the Astra changes. Astra got hit very hard here. We're going to talk about all of it. We're going to break it all down. So some of you might be a little heartbroken, and many of you are going to be very happy. So the max stars reduced from 5 to 4, just less stars straight up. Cooldown on retrieving stars got increased from 14 to 25 seconds. That's crazy, an increase that's almost double. Astra can now pick up place stars during the buy phase to refund their charge immediately, which is just a nice quality of life change, gives her more options. Max distance of star placement got increased though, from 10,000 to 30,000 to allow her to place stars across the furthest corners of the map. So she does get less stars, and it takes a long time to pick them up, right? But you're gonna be able to pick them up, you know, before the buy phase, so it's pretty easy to replace them and set them up optimally. And you can actually place them around the entire map, so you could be all the way tucked into a corner on one side of the map and still help your team on the other side of the map, which is good. And it's also gonna make sandbagging stars even more valuable. Instead of trying to place them up prematurely, you're gonna be able to use them in combat, and you're gonna want to, because you're not gonna be able to retrieve them very easily. Next up, we do got to talk about Gravity Well. Cooldown increased from 25 to 45. That's a huge increase. Gravity Well decreased from 525 to 475. That is just a slight decrease in Gravity Well. Gravity Well no longer affects anyone fully underneath the Gravity Well. Next up, Nova Pulse cooldown almost doubled from 25 to 45, and also the same thing, Nova Pulse no longer affects anyone fully underneath the Nova Pulse. Nebula cooldowns got increased from 14 to 25. Nebula cooldowns are now sequential instead of simultaneous, and the nebula size got increased slightly from 410 to 475. And the last changes are Astral Form. Well, in Astral Form, pings are no longer blocked by level geometry that Astra cannot see. Astra targeting ring in Astral Form is reduced to one ring that reflects the now unified size of all of her utility. Astra's targeted ring no longer randomly disappears when aiming across some map locations. Increase the speed of the overlay that covers Astra's screen when transitioning in and out of Astral Form, and also fixed an issue where stars were placed slightly above the location Astra was targeting. Now here's what Riot actually said about the Astra's changes. Quote, with the mastery of Astra's play patterns over time, she's become an overwhelming force in both coordinated and high MMR play. She's crowded out Brimstone and Omen by replicating their strengths, and they simply couldn't keep up with the map-wide impact of her utility. We're taking steps to create clear relative weaknesses in an attempt to carve more space out for our other controllers. This starts by reducing her overall utility output and increasing her ability cooldown in the hopes that this will increase the importance of each move she makes. Paired with this, we are taking the opportunity to provide some quality of life updates and bug fixes that we feel are long overdue. Now these changes are completely insane and are definitely going to change up the meta, but I don't have enough time to break them down here. We're going to be doing a follow-up tier list, so make sure you tune into that so that you don't miss out on all of the meta shifts that are being created by these buffs and nerfs. Now, next up, we got to talk about Viper, and let's listen to what Riot has to say first, and then we'll break down the changes. Quote, we like Viper's hybrid controller / sentinel role on the roster, but her buffs at our newest map addition have turned her into a must-have controller and best in-class sentinel in more situations than we think a dual-role agent should fill. With the below changes, we hope to create stark decision points on when Viper should manage her fuel, as well as provide clearer counterplay opportunities and attack windows for her enemies. First up, let's talk about the fuel. Fuel drain increased 50% when Toxic Screen and Poison Cloud are both active. Viper's fuel bar now turns red when she does not have enough fuel to activate her abilities. So remember, this is kind of how it used to be, right? It used to cost more fuel to have them both active, and then they changed it, allowing you to have both on, and it wouldn't increase your fuel consumption. However, it keeps creating these situations that not only just shroud the entire map with tons of smokes all over the place, but it also takes away some of the decision making from a character that is powerful now. And back when they made those changes, Viper was very underpowered and didn't play a substantial role in the meta. So this is what they're doing. It's almost a reversion, but it's just bringing this concept back into Viper's kit. More decision making means you have to actually manage your fuel better and decide which one of these abilities you actually have to use. Next up is Toxic Screen. Cooldown after deactivating increased from 6 to 8. Cooldown timer now starts when her smoke starts dissipating instead of when the deactivation telegraph plays. Deactivation delay decreased from 1 to 0.8. Toxic Screen now has yellow lights that indicate when it's on cooldown. Remove delay on Toxic Screen disabling when Viper is suppressed. Added a unique voiceover line that plays when her smoke is disabled by suppress. Next up is Poison Cloud. Cooldown after deactivating increased from 6 to 8. Cooldown timer now starts when her smoke starts dissipating instead of when the deactivation telegraph plays. Deactivation delay decreased 1 to 0.8. Poison Orb now has yellow light to indicate, and then the same thing as Toxic Screen with the orb disabling and the unique voiceover. And then last up, Snakebite duration got decreased from 6.5 to 5.5. Now, ultimately, I think that Riot is going to succeed here with forcing Viper to play one role or the other more starkly, rather than being able to do the jobs of a controller and a sentinel simultaneously. Often you're gonna have to wear like hats, right? You're gonna have to pick and choose. And while I do think that Viper is still gonna be an essential character and incredibly powerful, this is definitely a big hurt to her and will definitely mix up the meta as a whole. Now, there are the Yoru changes here. He has incredible changes. Changes to Fake Out, changes to Gate Crash, changes to Dimensional Drift, but we did an entire video breaking down those Yoru changes already. I don't want to repeat them here. Most of you already know all of these changes, but Yoru is going to be live as of this patch, and all of you Yoru mains can finally just be grateful that Yoru is so freaking nuts now. He's insane, he's awesome, and I'm very excited to play him myself. But I really gotta talk about these Icebox map changes. We saw speculations of them before, but we didn't get to see the actual changes themselves live. Now we do. So first off, let's look at B Green right here. Look at how different this looks from the outside. The door is very different, the placing is different, and this makes it so people don't just peek this hallway, right? Someone could hypothetically come out this door, push up, and then peek from a closer angle, or potentially make a dash play or something. It makes it a lot harder to opt this angle, and it provides some flexibility towards attackers. Now here's what it looks like from the outside, which is pretty interesting, and this little cubby right here is actually widened, which is interesting. Now next up is the B site rework. You get to see the giant yellow bin actually being completely moved in a different direction. It's actually perpendicular now to the point instead of being at a diagonal angle. And yeah, it also has two little boxes on the side. And I do think that this is actually going to be overall better for the point as a whole. It gives this space more reason to be taken, right? As an attacker, you have to clear this. And then as a defender, you really need to clear this before you try to defuse or smoke off these LOSs. And I overall think it's going to be a good change, but we're going to have to see how it plays first before I make a final conclusion. Next up is the actual B side itself. Look at how different this is. Hey, look, there's a little freaking panel on the inside. That's definitely interesting. And I do think that planting here gives you some more cover-based options. Rather than, you know, the need for a Sage Wall and a plant in ranked play, you have a little bit more flexibility. You could smoke off that cross. You could actually go tuck in the cubby. And yeah, I do think that overall, it's going to be a lot better for ability use and planting in general. Now, if we look in between Snowman and Kitchen, you get to see this back of sight changes. They are pretty interesting. It's closed off completely, and it encourages attackers to push up further to hold more space. And I always thought that back here was a little bit weird in the first place. So I actually like this change. It gives it more structure. And yeah, I think it's overall good. Now there's a slight change to Kitchen. The back wall got adjusted a little bit. So there's a little bit more space. It's a little more open here. And the reason that they say they gave this change is because it allows players to more easily clear this space. And now if you peek underneath this tube right here, you actually can no longer see the site or the plant zone, which is a lot better for planters on attack. And if someone's rotating back from mid, it's harder for them to contest from this angle. Now, next up, we have the mid section. You can see how the ramp gets shifted all the way to the right. In addition, they close this gap, so now any of the smoke agents will actually be able to cover this with one smoke. And I really do like a lot of these changes. It seems like they are not only nerfing Viper directly, but making it so maps where Viper's very good in have a lot different geometry, so it makes more sense to utilize other controller agents, and that will take away pick weight from Viper, which I like overall. I think it's really great, and it's going to mix up the meta in ways that you might not see right now, but you will notice later on. Now, if we look on the A site, we look right here, this little tiny fucking car, little shrubbery box thing on the point is now an actual box. which, you know, you can actually hide behind it now, gives you a little bit more cover. And now on the attacker side, you can no longer stand above that head peak on the attacker pipes, which makes it a little bit better for defenders. And it's kind of interesting. It seems like they are bolstering the options for defense on A side a little bit more, and then bolstering the options for attack on B side. So that's kind of interesting. They're trying to balance things out in that way. I mean, it's not directly a one-to-one, but I think that these changes will fundamentally make the map feel a lot better. And last up, the doorway from mid to A, actually the height of it got shortened, so you can no longer see from ramp the feet of people that are up on top of that, which makes that an angle that you have to clear as you push up. And it also makes it so you can't just shoot at the feet of people, or you can't get shot at the foot when you can't see who's shooting at your goddamn foot. Now, there is an interesting competitive update in this. It's a system that will allow players to access a variety of more maps and allow you to make sure that you don't get repeat maps. And it's going through only in Latin America. And I'm gonna break that down and talk about that in a completely different video. This video is getting pretty long. I don't wanna bloat this video too much, but it is something that I wanna mention because if it does well in Latin America, it will be pushed through to the full game and you won't get the same maps over and over again anywhere near as much. But yeah, definitely let me know what you think about this crazy patch. It dropped and it was freaking packed, man. This is gonna change the meta as we know it. It didn't notably hit some of the other top characters like Jett and Sova, and it didn't buff any of the other non-controller characters, but controllers really dictate metas, and especially Viper and Astra were so freaking strong that they warped the entire game around them. So just by nerfing these and allowing other options to shine, could have ripple effects across the entire game, the entire meta. And then there's Yoru being added to the mix, who's really strong. But I want to pass the question off to you. Do you think now Viper and Astra will see a substantial drop from the meta, or do you still see them as the top spot? Do you think that Yoru will see pro play? And what big character do you want to see changes next? I want to hear about all that down below. And while you're there, the GameLeap website is the best way to dominate and climb to Diamond, Immortal, or even Radiant in patch 4.04 with in-depth VOD reviews, tips and tricks, and so much more. Do yourself a favor and go check it out right now down below.